You copy a formula down and suddenly everything is wrong. When you understand why references move, the $ symbol suddenly makes sense. I'll show you how references work, how absolute references anchor formulas, and how to copy safely every time. Let's set sail. We want to calculate totals for a list of items. In this example, the quantity and the unit price change for each row, but the tax rate will stay fixed at 7%. And you can see that in cell F1. So to calculate the subtotals, we are just going to enter a formula, and it is B3, the quantity times the unit price, C3. And that gives us the subtotal for this row, $12.50. And it's easy to copy that down. You hover over the little green square in the lower right corner, and you see your pointer turns into a black plus. And you can click then and drag down. And as Excel copies those down, it changes the references from B3 times C3 to B4 times C4, and B5 times C5, and so on. These are relative references. Excel changes these as you copy down the column for each row. Now we're going to calculate the tax amount. So we're going to click in the first row, and we're going to type equals D3 times the tax amount, F1, and press enter, and it calculates the tax on $12.50 at 7%. Again, we're going to copy this down. And Excel does the same thing, except this time, when it copies to the second row, it's looking at F2 instead of still looking at the tax rate, which is in F1, which is what we would want. And so in this case, you get an error because it's looking at F2, which is just the text total. It can't do that multiplication, so it gives you an error. In row 5, for the binder, it's multiplying times cell F3, which is the total for the notebook. And that's why you're getting errors and numbers that don't look right. So instead of doing that, we are going to change this formula to be an absolute reference. And you do that by putting a $ in front of the column. That locks the column to that column, and a $ in front of the number 1, which is the row. It doesn't change the first row. The first row is still looking at F1. But when I copy these down, you see that the F1 stays the same, stays anchored to that tax rate number. So it multiplies each of these times 7%. And so the tax rate stays fixed no matter where I copy this. Now in this example, because I'm only copying down, I can also just lock on the row. So I'm going to show you that. I'm going to remove the $ in front of the column letter and press enter. Still calculates the same number. It's still looking F1 for the tax. And as I copy down, all the numbers stay the same. It is still looking at F1. If you look at the formulas in the formula bar, it still looks at F1 because I have the $ on the number 1. So it stays at row 1 as I copy down. But if I copied these across, which you also can do, the column would shift. And so in this case, it's safest because I'm always going to be looking at F1 to lock both the column and the row. And I'm going to copy that down. And that's the safe way to do it if you're always wanting to look at just a single cell. Now you might be asking, when would I copy across? And so I have an example of that as well. This is a sheet where we are calculating the pay for different employees. They each have different hourly rates and different hours worked each week, weeks 1, 2, 3, and 4. So we want to calculate the pay for each of those weeks. And so for week 1 pay for Alice, it's going to be B2 times C2. I press enter and I calculate the pay correctly. If I copy this across, and I'm just going to click in week 2 pay, it is looking at C2 times D2, which are just her week 1 and her week 2 hours multiplied together. And that's not correct. It's not multiplying by her hourly rate, but we can fix that as well. So back to the week 1 pay, I'm going to change this so that it always looks at column B, and we're still looking at row 2. We are not locking row 2, and you will see why in a moment. And C2 can change. I'm going to press enter. Still calculates that at $760. If I copy across, it calculates her pay for each week correctly, because in each of these, it's looking at the hourly rate that's locked in column B, and column D is the week 2 hours, and that's what we want to use to calculate the week 2 pay. And the same is true for week 3 and week 4. You see them highlighted for each of those. The reason I did not lock the row for the hourly rate is because I want to calculate the pay for all 4 of these employees. And by not locking the row, I'm able to copy all of these formulas down the spreadsheet as well. So I've selected all 4 weeks and click and drag down, and it calculates the pay for each of the employees for each of the weeks. And it looks at the hourly rate for each employee and the number of hours that each employee worked that correspond to each week. And I'll just show you Carla's as well. Carla's is looking at her hourly rate and her hours for week 1. And for her week 4 pay, still looking at her hourly rate and her hours for week 4. So the thing to remember is, when you're deciding whether you need to anchor with absolute references using the $, you need to think about, if you're copying the formula, what should move and what should stay anchored or stay the same. You can lock either the row by putting a $sign in front of the row number, or you can lock the column by putting a $sign in front of the column letter, or you can anchor both, lock both, by putting a $sign in front of both the column letter and the row number. And in general, you should lock what you don't want to move and then let other things move accordingly. And once you get the hang of it, Excel starts becoming predictable, and that puts you in more control over your formula copying and your worksheet. So until next time, I wish you smooth sailing.